but I couldn't, Oh. Okay.
That's in fact.
I don't know how to. Okay. Now I figured it out. Okay.
Okay, from the top.
Okay.
Yeah, when you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay.
Okay.
Maybe you just wanna introduce a little bit about like your practice and what you generally do in your art first. Then you can show us your stuff.
Okay. Who starts first?
Yeah, that's you.
Okay. Hi. I'm Elif Susler. I live in Istanbul, Turkey, and I usually make installations using several media, and it depends to the idea which kind of medium I'm going to use. So it can be performance, a video, or cut out newspapers, collages, drawings. So it depends really. It changes with the idea and what I'm going to question and I'm going to say. But they always turn out to be installations when I carry them in an exhibition place. So I always consider how they are going to be exhibited and take form in a space. So that's what I do generally. So today I'm going to talk about one of the recent performances I made. Of course, I'm just going to show screenshots of the video, but you can watch it on Vimeo as well, the rest. And also I will talk about an installation, a collage work. I already finished, but I'm also following that idea, and that's why I'm going to show my recent work, which is very related to this installation I already finished. So those are the two main works I'm going to show today. It's better to start, should I just go on, or?
Yeah, you can continue.
Okay. Then, yeah, I can show the works right now and talk about them while,
Yeah.
It's easier to talk about with the visuals. Okay. So, can you see it?
Yep.
Okay. So, this was a guided tour performance called Ballot 2020. Ballot is one of the districts in Istanbul, very historical district, in fact, and it's going through a restoration process. So I made this work during a residency in Ballot. In fact, it took 1.5 months, the residency, and it was just one piece I exhibited after the residency finished. So it's taking place in year 2020, and I have, I don't know, 16 stops, and I'm talking about their future, their possible future of those buildings, and I'm kind of a cut and pasted from future to, in those from 20,000, but in fact I'm showing the present functions. I'm showing their actual buildings, but I'm talking about something else, what they became in the future. So it's kind of there's a shift in time, in space, not in space. There's a shift in time, but also their functions changed and they became like their identities are getting lost in the future. So I'm trying to show them what kind of changes they went through. So
Okay.
Okay.
yeah, it's.
How long is this tour actually?
Sorry?
How long was this performance tour?
The video is for it's 30 minutes,
Okay.
but of course it took a day to make this to finish the recordings, and also I edited it.
Okay. So there wasn't like an actual tour where you brought people around and you start talking like you're performing?
There were some friends of mine, but actually it was a video, not a real-time kind of performance.
Okay.
So it was supposed to be exhibited on a screen, but no, I haven't actually took people with me and made an actual guided tour. It was kind of a simulation of it.
Okay.
And also I added some cheesy music, like loop, in the middle of the video. So it's kind of those touristic videos that you can see in TV shows, and so it has that kind of a light structure, structure in the video. So.
All right.
Yep. And sometimes, of course, I had few audience who didn't know what I was doing. They were listening and then they were really confused and looking at me and look at the things I was showing, and then they were leaving like, what's she saying? And they didn't understand what we were doing, but we had some audience during the tour. I can show this last part is, for example, this one. It's one of the churches in the area in Ballot, and I was talking about a swimming pool, which is there, because of the a fire accident, it was ruined, and then they transformed the building into a swimming pool. But I was showing, of course, the inside of the church. So I think it's kind of again a collage kind of a work for me, because there are lots of gaps between what I'm saying and what I'm showing. and also yeah. And also the people are kind of, they don't care what I'm doing. They are, you know, going on with their lives, but I'm taking this guided tour performance, and it's kind of a it's formal, but there is nothing formal at the background.
So you were speaking in Turkish the whole time?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe you can put the link here in the chat box and we can watch it.
Actually, I can put the link of my Vimeo account, and you can check other videos as well, maybe.
So this video work was shown somewhere? Was it like in a public area where everyone was like going through a guided simulation tour? Or...
Oh, sorry.
Ooh.
Okay, I will turn this one.
It's a very interesting idea of using the present and yet talking about the future. I think with me being in Singapore, because we are so future oriented in a lot of the way we imagine our daily living.
Mm.
And we keep making plans for the future, and everything that we see.
Yeah, it's like you're not living in the present.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's always that goal to meet in, you know, 2020 or 2050 or whatever, you know.
Yeah, that was the starting idea, in fact, because politicians and, you know, the media, they are always looking at future, like you said, but not living in the present, like forgetting the past, making plans for the future, but always the present is always underrated, like you said. And they are always putting those goals in front of them. In 2023, now it's 2023, but when I was making this video, the target was 2020. That's why it was called 2020. But now it's 2023. So, yeah. But when 2023 arrives, they will forget about it as well. So, like you said, there's a problem with, you know, giving enough importance with the present time and also the past. So they're always looking at the future, but not caring about the other times. Okay.
So this is how it is in Istanbul, where you are. Like this is how your country is being like run.
Yeah, I mean, if a problem occurs and if there's a, you know, protest, they tend to give examples from the past, but also showing, like I said, a goal in the future. So it's always about forgetting what's going on right now as well. So yeah, it's how it's being handled right now.
Okay.
Okay. So
can you see?
Can you put the link
on? Yeah. Okay.
And then you will also be talking about your second like collage, the thing at your back. behind you.
Yeah.
I can see some.
Yeah.
Before that, could I ask a question?
Yeah.
Yeah. I got disconnected. I don't know if you asked, but
Oh.
Oh. Okay, you can just carry on with the next one and then
Okay, then
comes back. Yeah.
we'll talk about the others. Mm.
Can you wait for a second?
Okay.
It's a slow start. Tonight is a very happening night in the art scene here because we have the private preview of the Affordable Art Fair.
Ah, tonight.
And then there are quite a number of like show openings. So people are outside there looking at art, drinking wine.
Ah. So will you go out after the session is finished?
No, of course not.
Okay.
Yeah, and we have the last time I invited this curator who runs a gallery in Korea. I'm not sure if you know him. His name is Juno. So Juno runs New Old Wall, and he came on our session, and then he will come again later on. He's a bit late, so we were sharing last time about how he runs his gallery and how the art scene is like in Korea. And if he managed to come on later, he can tell you more about his latest plans, which he briefly mentioned.
Yeah. I'd like to. Yeah, I wanted to show a work I made in Seoul too, but I think those works were much more related with what I'm doing right now. So.
Okay. So where do you show your video? Do you show it at some gallery or space or?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the residency, we had an exhibition. There were only two artists, me and an American artist. So he was Spanish, in fact, but he was living in States. So I showed several works like collage and video and performance video and some objects and drawings. But I really wanted to have another guided performance with, with an appointment with the, with an audience. But the timing was not that favorable that time because of the protests going on. So we were really busy, and people were really busy, and so maybe in the future. I will repeat the same kind of performance with other,
It'll be like so real if your performance was actually a real guided tour that people sign on and buy a ticket. Like it's somewhere as a poster amongst the other normal guided touristy tours. And then but yours is different. And I don't know, I always like to see like how the public respond to a certain artist's work, like directly confronted with your own vision. And how would they feel? Would they feel like cheated? Would they feel like, hey, give me my money back? Or what are you talking about? Like, it's always good to have some form of like confrontation. And you cannot control results. So it's just a provocation, so-called, maybe.
Yeah, I really wanted to see how they will react. But I had a preview, of course, there. They thought we were shooting a commercial program about the district. So that's why they were listening. In fact, they didn't think it was a guided tour, but it was a TV show. Yeah, but if it will be a guided tour, so it will be difficult to record, I think, maybe.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it has to be very kind of, spontaneous as well, I think.
It can actually develop into like a certain theme. Like this is the theme of your tour where you juxtapose the present and the future. And like,
Yeah.
there are kinds of themes of walking tours, like it's maybe looking at architecture, looking at typography or signages on architecture, like a certain theme sort of thing. So I don't know, you could build it into an experience more than just the tour. Like you can add on like different things and maybe take a certain transport or like that.
Yeah, there.
Tour. Very interesting tour.
Yeah, there were some children which were, posing just behind me, kind of. There's been some scenes like that. In fact, I have a photograph. I will show it in maybe later on. Okay, I will just talk about this collage I made.
Okay.
Then I can show you the other one as well. Okay. You can't see it, right?
Yes, yeah, I can see.
This one?
Yes.
No, I only see a blank screen. Ah, yes.
This one. Okay.
We have a new audience here, James. We can't see him, but he can see us, I think. He's from UK.
Hi.
He's watching
Hi,
from
James.
work. Why are you doing that? If you have any comments, James, you can just type into the chat window. Okay, continue, please.
Okay. So this work I made in 2011, and and I went on working on it in 2012. They were cuts of images from newspapers. Maybe you can show some details from here. And it's called Birds. So it's a combination of men and women figures from the newspapers. So it's kind of a dream creature I wanted to create. Like beautiful parts of women are combined with powerful images of men, in fact. So it's kind of a dream creature which every people wanted to see, beautiful and strong. But when they came together, it becomes disturbing sometimes. So it's kind of this gap I wanted to play with. Like there are two different adjectives that were favorable to use for people, but when they came together, it's not always the perfect combination or solution. And also, it's kind of related to with my childhood play. There was a play I was It was about I was making dolls out of newspapers, but of course I was always cutting off this beautiful woman from the newspapers and creating these real dolls. So it's kind of it shows my habit of reading newspapers, how it was changed. And I'm still creating dolls, but combined with reality much more.
Why are they called birds?
Uh, because when I looked at the whole image, it looks like there's a chaos, but there's an order as well. It's like a, music, or
Yeah.
it's like a composition.
Hmm.
So, and also the lines, also they suggest that kind of a, you know, mm,
But they were not arranged like in a particular way. There isn't like an underlying system. You just place them like this.
yeah, there isn't any relevance in terms of meaning or visually either. It was very random. But after I put them randomly, I looked around and changed some of them with the others because of the height, or but it wasn't. It always changes when I install this piece somewhere else. It has a completely different order, and also the space was smaller, so I couldn't put all of the images. But it's always adjustable. Here
Yeah.
it's 200 centimeters to 100 or something. And also those sticks. On those sticks I pasted Velcro.
Yeah.
So and you can always take them out and change the order as well. So it's really easy to play with it. Again, you can play with it. So
now that you mention sticks, then I think of birds, like birds sitting on sticks.
yeah, on sticks as well. Yeah. And also, I didn't just put them on the wall because I like to have a kind of a three-dimensionality in the work. So there is always this 2D thing in my works, but also it suggests some space. This one is politicians were jumping on from fire. So they were all holding hands together. Then but I added different legs from different women.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it's also about all those images of men are taken from the front pages of the newspapers, but the legs, they belong to magazines, or like they belong to the back of the newspapers.
So they are all purposely headless because?
Sorry?
They all don't have heads.
They don't have?
A head? Head.
Yeah, I didn't put any head because to kind of make them anonymous a little bit. It's not like a censorship, but I didn't want to put a certain identity to those people.
They remind me a little bit of standees, where you can take a photo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you put your own head there.
Yeah, you can put any head in your mind.
Yeah, headless is actually quite a strong symbol. I mean, when you look at all these headless things and then you name it birds, so they're like headless birds, and it's a male and a female, but it's not either. So I thought it was something that worked really well with how you combine this and without a head.
Yeah, that's right. Because you always question, okay, he looks like a man because he has all this outfit which is very proper to men, but they don't have hats, so it's not completely a man either, maybe. So, yeah.
Okay.
So, and I'm making a 2014 version of those birds right now. That's why the images are changing. The legs are not changing that much, in fact. But the upper bodies of the people, they are changing because of course, the news and what's going on in the world is changing. But the visuals about women, they are always the same. That's what I experienced right now.
Okay.
This one was from a protest in Ukraine, and this one from protest from Istanbul.
You could give them like different names, like different species of birds.
Yeah, good idea. I have to look for it. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And finally, I will show my other recent. It's a future project I'm going to finish. I hope in 2015. It's just a sketch of the work I'm going to make. It will be in a museum in Istanbul, and normally there will be like platforms underneath those figures. They are like 200-meter sculptures. They will be, in fact, and they will occupy the space as bigger birds. I mean.
Okay.
And people will be able to walk around them and join them, maybe take photographs with them. So it will be like a bigger birds piece in the future.
Okay.
Birds on stilts.
Yeah. But
okay, great. Please tell us more when you finish this work, and we would like to see it in a museum and larger than life.
Yeah, me too. I really want to see it.
Okay. Any questions more for Elif? Otherwise, we will move on to Boedi. Boedi.
Okay. All right.
Hi.
Hi.
I
just want to actually ask Elif something. How does it feel like to be a young person living in Turkey right now? Like, because your work seems to talk a lot about the future and maybe certain projections of how things may turn out, and certain values that are part of normative society that you are questioning. So what is the situation there, like generally for young people like yourself right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult to right now, especially since last year. It's difficult to focus on what you were normally, has to do, because there are lots of protests and instabilities are visible. In fact, they were always there, but now they are very visible in front of us in the streets. And now people are not afraid of protesting and vocalizing it.
Okay.
So I think it's getting better, because now it's much more possible to show what you are doing, and you can show it without questioning what you are doing. Yeah, you are questioning, of course, but when you look outside and when you look at your work, you realize that there's always something more, or something more daring to do, without being bothered, of course. So it gives you courage, but also it makes difficult things to focus. And for example, when there's an explosion, we all, focus on that event, and it's normal. I mean, it's what's happening now. So our works will change according to that as well. So it's always better to just look and accept what things are right now. But now it's possible to join in it and make some changes with yourself and with your work. So it's getting better, I think.
What if nothing happens? Is it more difficult when nothing happens?
Nothing happens. Not more difficult, but you always turn to yourself, like question yourself, oh, what I'm doing, what I'm going to do in the future. So it's much more existential questions, which creates much more questions, maybe. But you can always, if nothing happens, there are always questions to be asked, I think. If it's not on the, if it's not very visible, but there are always problems, and we will always have problems, I guess. So there are always things to be discussed, and there should be, in fact.
So. I asked this question because I feel that here where I am, very little happens. And when very little happens, like you said, you have to go and search and find the problems. And it's difficult when you have to look inside rather than something happens outside and you respond to it. Actually, I find that easier than to have to find something to do when there's nothing. Yeah, this is how I feel. I don't know how Boedi feels, but Boedi can tell us more. He's been living in Singapore for many years.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Dorcas. Okay, maybe just a little short introduction about myself. I was born in Indonesia, and I arrived in Singapore when I was 9 years old, without my parents, with only my elder sister, and ever since then we just basically lived with different Singaporean families as foreign students in Singapore. And the reason why why our parents brought us there was because of some ethnic tension in Indonesia at the time against the Indonesian Chinese, like myself. So it's very interesting that we are now talking about this difference between something happening and something not happening. Because I have come to actually be thankful about how Singapore is such a stable kind of an environment. That's coming from where I was. But I think that stability is really always a superficial kind of a quality, even if it is there. If you really bother to look somewhat deeper, you will always be able to see the kind of movements and dynamic kind of changes in every society that we live in. And similarly, I guess in Singapore as well. I mean, in Singapore, what is ironic is that if you look at our buildscape, it is never stable. It is always changing. And I've always thought about the built environment in Singapore very much like a paste-on, something like a wallpaper-ish kind of environment, because you so easily tear it down, replace it with something else. It's unlike the built environment that I see in parts of Europe, and certainly not the ones that I see in other parts of Asia. what working on right now here in Kalis has something to do with that observation. So I'll just use some images to talk a little bit about my practice.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
By the way, Boedi is now doing a residency in France. Exactly.
Oh.
Okay. So deals a lot with drawing. Learned drawing. I started drawing when I was a child, maybe when even as young as 2 or 3 years old, and I never stopped. And drawing has become an embodied kind of a process for me to understand and grasp the reality around me. And in drawing, I enjoy the combination of both the visual and also the tactile kind of process. So these are some examples of my drawings. They're also in a form of abstract mark making. I also do drawing as life art, using it as a way to open up a kind of a social space between the artist and the audience. This is a work that I did at Singapore's Independent Art in 2012. I also did it as a staged.
Are you showing us your desktop? Sorry, Boedi.
Sorry?
Are you showing us your desktop now? Is it a screenshot now?
Yeah, sorry.
Screen share.
Screen share, I forgot. Okay.
Okay, yeah, we can see.
Yeah, you can see it. Sorry, I'll start all over again, all right?
Okay. No problem.
Okay. So, yeah. So I make drawings as starting from its most basic premise as a form of a mark making on paper, and then drawing as live art to open up kind of a social space between the artist and the audience. Drawing as mark making as a staged kind of a live performance. Drawing as performance art. Making marks that may not be visually so obvious, but maybe in the form of movement in time and space. Drawing in the form of installations, like this one and this one. So, yeah. So drawing is a very kind of a personal and deep process for me to approach my artistic problems. So right now I am doing an artist residency in Kalis, France. Screen share.
So now you are in France.
Yeah. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, this is where I am right now. It's a medieval village in South France. It's very near Spain, and a population of about 1,000 to 1,500 people. There is an old church at the center, because I think most of these European villages or communities in the past always in form of a parish as a kind of a center of authority. And yeah, this is a more close-up view. The architecture of the village is mostly made up of stone walls. Yeah, sorry, this is a picture of the residency that it's the building on the left.
Okay.
And this is my studio. This is where I'm sitting right now.
You're living in a different era.
Yeah, that's right. So as I was saying, right, this is a medieval village. It was, I mean, whatever you see there spanned from the 11th century to the 18th century. You know, so there's like quite a mixed architectural styles across the centuries. But most of the buildings are built out of stones. And the stones are very, very thick stones, like the residency that I am staying in right now. The walls, the outer walls, they are almost 1 meter thick. Yeah, so it's you can actually feel the architecture because when you step out in a sunny day, you feel warm. But when you step into the building, it feels very much cooler immediately. So when I first arrived in Kalis, I started to be drawn to these walls, to this architectural element, because again, coming back to that observation of architecture in Singapore, or the built environment on the surface in Singapore, it is one that is really superficial, you know, and it is a kind of architectural surface that doesn't tell you how long it has been there for, because if you look at the public housing in Singapore, very often it gets upgraded every maybe like 5 or 10 years or whatever, and they just paint over it, you know. And of course, if you go to the town area, many commercial buildings we have in Singapore would constantly renew themselves by replacing their surface with different kinds of new cladding. So when I arrived in Kalis and I saw this very, very old surfaces, it intrigues me. I wanted to know more about them. So I began to go around the village on walks, and I came across some abandoned buildings like this one. Interior shots of the abandoned buildings. It used to be a corn mill, but nobody owns it now, so it's just left there to maybe one day collapse. Yeah, so these are some of the pathways that I walked through. As you can see, on the two sides of it, they are actually made up of stones, but they're totally covered with moss now. Yeah, this used to be walls, and they are so old that the stones have started to stratify into all these very thin slices. So it's very, very old.
Wow.
Yeah. So I felt that I wanted to really look into this through drawing or through mark making in some way. And I started out with like just doing a product. That's not me, of course. That's another artist in residence from Australia. So every time I visit these very old places, I really like to just take a graphite rubbing of the surface as a way to sort of touch that that place, you know, using my hands and making marks, you know, out of that surface. But in Keyless, I started to experiment with printing. So I would take with me a print roller, some ink, and also sheets of paper. And I would walk around to these abandoned buildings, and I would ink up the walls, and then frottage, or make a rubbing out of that wall texture using this printing technique. And these are some of the results. So what I find to be interesting is that if I can go back to that photo just now, okay. What my eyes could see of that wall many a time is very different to the marks that are produced. So a wall that is seemingly white and smooth, once it is applied with ink and once I sort of made a rubbing out of it, every tiny kind of unevenness in that smooth wall, in that visually smooth wall, is captured a relationship on the paper. So it is these rubbings, they are two-dimensional visual information that I wasn't able to see without using my hands, without the gesture of mark making. And I find that idea to be quite interesting. So I continued on to use other kinds of methods to apply the ink onto the stone walls, and I managed to get even finer kind of textures out of those walls.
What
And
about
because
the
it is,
sorry.
these are the kind of a loose kind of a outline of the stone. Which are sort of hand-drawn around the stone. So what is also interesting is that with printing, every time I ink up the surface, depending on how much ink and how much I sort of press against it at the rubbing stage, the pattern or the texture can be very different based on the same piece of stone. So I began to think about it as a pure kind of a mark making exercise rather than simply trying to document a piece of object. And I have more photographs of the prints. If you're interested, I can share with you later. But how this is all going to progress is that I am now thinking about bringing back this information into a three-dimensional kind of existence. So I thought of this possible idea of making casts, of the rocks or the stones, maybe using metal, and then silk screening the prints onto some fabric. This is just a very rough mock-up of what I, and then using that fabric to sort of cover up the object. So it's almost like a veil, and where the two-dimensional projections, the marks, becomes a foreground or the immediate interface for perceiving that object, which is something that I experienced in the process of making this when I made these marks using the protaging and the print making techniques. And from here, I can then slowly build this possibly into bigger installations, because I'm now busy collecting as much textural information as I can in whatever remaining days I have here, and hopefully I can collect enough stone prints to eventually build a two-dimensional stone wall, as an installation.
In a way, you are also like this technique of doing it. In a way, it's also like what you previously mentioned, like how everything in Singapore is like a wallpaper. So you're bringing back some wallpapers to Singapore.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So you get that. Yes.
Yeah, that was what came to my mind when I saw this image, like putting a print, and then below is different from what is you see on the surface.
Yeah.
And
yes.
these things from France, they totally don't belong to Singapore, but you are going to, I don't know, show it somewhere here or
Yes.
merge it with the landscape here.
Correct. I'm glad you pick it up, because I felt that on one hand, I am not satisfied with the kind of material reality in Singapore, but it is, at the end of the day, our reality. And so if I am to bring this experience back to Singapore, I need to find a way to let that reality be combined, or somehow it be transformed back into kind of a local vernacular. Yeah, that's exactly what I hope to be doing. And in fact, Wallpaper is a tentative title for this work.
Oh, okay. But will you be telling like the local audience in Singapore that these prints were from France, or you will not even tell them?
No, I will tell them, because it is through this residency that I had that kind of a critical distance, from Singapore, to be able to see certain things that I wouldn't have otherwise be able to. So this residency is a way to look at maybe the environment in Singapore in a much clearer way than if I had stayed in Singapore,
So, like, to you, is it like very important when you go for residencies, like the location, the environment, that it actually helps you look back at Singapore? Do you actually select when you go overseas, like what kind of place you'll be going and how it's going to affect you?
I would say yes. I would say that I do consider what I am getting, what I hope to achieve from that experience. So this residency is one of the few residencies that I could find online that focuses on drawing. It's called Draw International. So if you Google it up, Draw International, you should be able to spot this place. And this residency is also very near the prehistoric caves. And I've always been interested in the prehistoric caves because, firstly, it's the oldest man-made drawings in the world. And secondly, once again, it combines this mark making and drawing with space, because all these images and marks are made on its walls. So there's surface, there is space, and there is drawing and marks. And I think these are the kind of I'm interested to explore in my work.
Have you actually tried making those graphite rubbings from architecture in Singapore? Like, I know in certain parts of Singapore, we still have some old buildings that are more tactile and all that. Like, have you ever thought of doing that as well?
Yeah, I think being here is giving me some ideas of possibly using a printing technique to almost move an entire wall from one place to another. So I can, let's say, go to an abandoned apartment, pick an interesting wall, and print it onto paper. But of course, what you print will never be the same as the real one, but it is something that has gone through your hands. It'll be interesting to displace that, you know, into another kind of an interior. So,
and how long are you going to stay there?
I will be leaving in about 1.5 weeks' time. Yeah.
What I found interesting. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
What I found interesting is like you are taking out those irregularities of the stones and pasting it somewhere much more regular, kind of, and then you are thinking to put like these stones underneath it, right? From metal.
Yes. Yeah.
And
yeah. So.
They will be again. They will have those, you know, very clear surfaces again, I guess, right? Or
yes,
they will be rough as the. So and
they
again, you are putting the. There will be. Sorry.
Sorry. Yeah. So the printed kind of fabric will be placed on top of the cast, of the stone cast.
So you are bringing back to this, you know, again rough surface, but it's only the illusion of this roughness, kind of, right?
Yeah. It's a kind of a transformed version of that rough surface.
Yeah, it's also related, like when you said this pasted buildings in Singapore. You said, yeah, you are also you are trying to make it look like have this illusion of roughness again, kind of.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm still thinking about how I can develop that wallpaper idea further, but maybe using a silk screen, like hand-printed silk screen, you can get a much stronger and immediate kind of a two-dimensional image as compared to mechanic produced ones. So it is. I'm trying to, I think, in my mind, create a more interesting two-dimensional experience. Yes, but that would be the next stage after the these objects.
Have you thought about the colors? I don't know, maybe I'm thinking too far ahead, because like all the buildings that you showed us, like they are all dull colors, like gray or brown, or they are mostly those colors, right? But when you put it onto a screen, like you can choose any color you want. I think that's a part where you can actually play around a lot.
Yes. Yeah. The colors are definitely going to be based on this palette of the village, because if you look around at the windows of the village, the council actually has a limited palette of blue, green, white, gray, and I think light brown or something, because these are colors that look against the stones. So I will probably with these sets of colors.
Again, do you think you will transform that installation with an interactive, again, performance, or you will just install them and let people walk around them?
I think for the instant, it will be more like presented as an object. But that live performance thing, I don't know. It
possible.
It doesn't seem. Yeah, I mean it's always possible, but I would not force it, into it if I don't feel like it is there for a reason. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, right now.
Yeah, go ahead.
The objects have a very nice creative quality about it, and yeah, I'm thinking of possibly using a translucent kind of a fabric, so you have a kind of a inkling about the object underneath, but your perception of it gets interrupted by the prints, on the fabric. Yeah, so.
I'm curious to know how is the architecture like in Istanbul, like where you are. Is it also like preserved old architecture, or is it a mix of new?
It depends from district to district. In fact, there is one where a lot of skyscrapers are. But if you just go, the neighborhood of this district, this very business-like district, you will be able to see very poor neighborhood. So, like, there too much gap between them. There isn't too many distance between these districts, but too much gaps in terms of people's lives. So that's as interesting, I guess. But also there are lots of historical buildings as well. But in the name of restoration, they are being they lose their identity or history sometimes. So and also there is this. They are always trying to renovate, and because when they renovate the buildings, there are other organizations which will benefit from it. So there are always changes going on. There's always constructions, and they're building up new buildings and tearing them down and then building new ones. So there is always something going on in the streets, and you can always see fences around buildings. And when they took it off, you see a plain surface of cement, or I don't know, something very ugly sometimes. They're unveiling it, but it's not something you want to see in front of you every time. But yeah, there's a problem with this, protecting old buildings, and sometimes they just let them die, the buildings.
Yeah, like just abandoned.
Yeah, abandoned. Yeah, like it's they just the buildings, they just,
Just
get
sit there and
afterwards.
have no use.
Yeah, and you can see cracks, and there is only one option afterwards. They have to, renovate them afterwards, or destroy them. But there's always this gap. There are those very new buildings, and there's those old buildings which are really ruined, and they don't care about them anyhow. So yeah, the buildings.
Is there
There is
like
always
the presence of like, because I know in London sometimes, and in places where there are abandoned buildings, artists actually go and take over these kind of spaces, and they turn them and they run like artistic activities and turn into a gallery or something. Like, is there this kind of presence in Istanbul where artists take over spaces like that?
It started, yeah, there were some places, but it wasn't very common. But after the protests, now they are taking the houses which were not used and using them as houses of occupation. How, I don't know how you will translate it. People gather in the houses and, discuss the present issues. It can be about art, but mostly it's about life and discussion here. But it's not very focused on art right now.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, now it's getting much more common. What about in Singapore? Are there those kind of houses which are abandoned and used by, I don't know, other purposes?
Boedi, are there abandoned spaces? Are we quicker than the government to seek them out before they are gone?
Not that many abandoned spaces in Singapore. Yeah, definitely not. It's the land is too precious in Singapore, and
land is really expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, in Istanbul too.
Like, we had one. It was at remember about the displacements. So this friend, so we have this friend. His grandmother or family was gonna move out of this like very old 3-story bungalow, and it was going to be demolished. But before they actually demolish it, they actually talked to the developer to say, hey, can we host, I think a 1 month or so or 2 months exhibition about art and stuff and performance and things. Yeah, so they actually got agreed that, okay, yeah, the developer will just give them some more time before they demolish the building. And so they started this displacements community project. And during the whole period of time, I think it's 1 month or so, yeah, there were shows and there were music and performances and things like that. And then after that, yeah, they just bid goodbye to the building and it's gone. So it's a short intervention.
Yeah, here too. There was that building before they renovated. They weren't, they were going to destroy it, but before the renovation, they let the artists use the space as well. So there are a few, cases like that, like you said.
Okay, but actually, Boedi, like, have you ever thought about going back to Indonesia to put this into practice, like what you learned in France?
Yeah. I mean, I immediately thought of my childhood home to make prints, to make impressions of some of the walls there. I think that would be interesting, and then to sort of bring them into Singapore, because I recently became a Singapore citizen, like just 2 years ago. So I think that would be quite meaningful, in a way you are. I mean, migration never stops. It's a process that doesn't stop.
Yeah.
It's not just that, okay, you change your passport and you're now living in a place, but you choose to change you know, your home to a different place, that process of bringing those fragments, you know, from where you used to be, I don't think it's an ending. It's an ever-ending kind of a process. Yeah. You're constantly migrating those things. Yeah.
Mm.
So in this, you're in constant transition. It's maybe just the speed, you know, gradually kind of stabilizes, but you're constantly in transit.
That's true. That's true. Good.
It's different. It's different from people who are born in that place. I think, like Dorcas, you're born in Singapore, right?
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, I don't know if I should say this, but I spent 4 years in London studying and working, and actually during that very, very short 4 years, I mean, compared to people who've been living 10, 20, 30 years in UK or something, like, I could already feel that sort of like a displacement and the cultural barrier and having to adapt, and like it was very, I did not expect it, because I just went there with one thing in mind, which is to study and, you know, look at London, a new environment, the arts and things like that. But all these things just came to me, and I wasn't prepared. So it was quite I need to kind of like mentally prepare myself each time I go back to London, because 4 years there, I normally about come back to Singapore twice a year. So and this twice a year trips, right, to and from Singapore are actually very tiring, mentally mostly. And you have to switch your how you think, how you act in different culture, and it's totally opposite. Even though Singapore is westernized, but in the UK it's still very English, very British, and it's still not the same. So
yeah, of course.
That was the first time I actually encountered so many people of different nationalities living in the same city. Even in university, like so many different people. How should I behave, or how should I conduct myself so that I will not be like out of place or something like that. Yeah, so that was a very long thing I had to learn for a long time, and keep learning and finding out what mistakes I made or that. So, but I think it was good for me, as in I kind of like the British culture in certain aspects, and I learned quite a bit of how they think, how they actually how the system works. It's not the same as Singapore, but I quite like it, and I kind of try to bring it into my own work as well. I like a British certain sense when they do their art and things like that. But nonetheless, I came back to Singapore after 4 years, basically because I still feel that I'm an outsider. Even if I continue living in London, I'm still someone who's viewing from the outside, like a third party kind of thing. I'm not British. I cannot adopt their culture into my daily life. So it's still a bit like separate. That was why I decided that, I'm still basically Asian, and this is where I'm more comfortable with, and that's it. Yeah. But it was a really good experience.
So, I mean, a lot of what you just said reminds me of my own experience as well.
But I think this kind of thing is, in a way, is good for an artist. Like, it really provokes you and really makes you think a lot, because many things happen and they're personal things. It's not like here now where everything is, like you said, calm and stable, and it's really hard to find things to do for me lah. It's really hard to create problems, although there are problems, but you might not exactly be interested in those problems. Like, it's just to be related to you personally and your own artistic practice. It's not like you can use everything that happens and into your own work, right? You still select, because you still have a certain area of interest. So so I would say I was more inspired when I was overseas, because I was so provoked personally.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's always better, like you said, to migrate, but also find that comfortable place you have as well. And
Yeah.
if you can do both, it's always, the best option, I guess.
Have you lived like out of Istanbul for some time before you leave?
Not too long. I mean, at most 5 months in
Okay.
France, but 3 months in Seoul, Korea. But
Oh,
1 month and 2 months, it was always like that, not for a year. But still, after I come back from those places, I was feeling much more outgoing. I mean, much more sociable, and I was much more eager to talk to people. But afterwards, when I, get used to being here,
Yeah,
it becomes again the usual, the ordinary things,
that's
and you
true.
look at people, and yeah.
yeah.
That's what I feel. So now that I'm back here, like you just slip back into how you were before, like you know, subconscious.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. There's that personality that lives here, and when you come back, you merge with it again. Like,
Yeah. So I guess we
Yeah.
are all humans after all.
yeah.
Okay. Any last words? Oh, actually, James wrote something in the chat box. James is a friend of mine I met when I was in the UK. Yeah, he had some comments here. That's true. Good. Any last words before we end?
Well, it was
Uh,
really nice to, see, those, works in progress as well, and how Boedi was influenced from this environment, and it was really interesting to see the photographs and after the works, uh, which came, on the surface.
mm,
So I want to see what's going to be like in the
Yeah.
future. So it will be great if you can, let us
Yeah.
yeah.
know.
Okay. I
Yeah. Same for
will.
you. Mhm.
Yeah.
Just update us like on Facebook. Yeah, we'll post it
Mm.
on our page and keep everyone informed.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It will
Look
be
forward
great.
to the
And
new
it
work.
was really also nice to meet you too, Dorcas, of course.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you everyone.
Okay.
We'll keep in touch
Yes.
and James
Have a
as
nice
well.
day.
Yeah,
Thanks.
nice to meet
Okay.
you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.